If someone needs to tell you how nice they are all the time, chances are they probably aren't that nice. In fact, they might be a goddamn sociopath. Who is someone that has done this for a long time? Someone that has always shown off their generosity and goodwill. Someone that has always pledged people disingenuous donations. Tons of employees coming forward about the horrors of the working conditions there. Ellen's true colors started to shine, losing her show, her fans, and above all, losing her kind persona. This was together against her will. How did it get this bad for Ellen? How did someone who had the nicest, most wholesome persona, who got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, suddenly just become so hated? Let's cut the bullshit and get right into it. So first off, how did Ellen even become one of the biggest pop culture phenomenons? I mean, you don't just get a hit TV show overnight. Well, you see, Ellen already gained a pretty decent reputation for her stand-up material over the years. In the late 70s, Ellen started to do open mic nights out of complete boredom. Soon enough, though, she found out that she liked it and was actually pretty good at it. She would continue for a couple years, and in 1981, she was an MC at the Clyde's Comedy Club in New Orleans. 3 years later, she started to tour nationally, and Showtime named her as the funniest person in 1984. But her real big break was when she appeared on the Johnny Carson Show in 1986.
I've been keeping in shape lately, you know. You have to. I'm getting older. I'm 27. People say, you don't look 27. You look like you're about 23. I'm lucky because that runs in my family. My grandmother is 97. She looks about 93.
Back then, if you actually wanted to make it as a comedian, you had to appear on these late night talk shows and do a set. And Ellen nailed hers. People loved Ellen because she was really confident and made really silly jokes about her personal life and her family. It was very simple humor that let her get a wide appeal. It wasn't controversial, it wasn't political, it wasn't edgy, it wasn't really anything too unnecessary.
We used to, my dad, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, he walks up to me before Christmas one day and he says, Ellen, what would you like for Christmas? I said, gosh, Dad, I'd like a little dolly. Christmas Day, he wheels in this tremendous heavy metal thing. No, Dad, that's not what I mean.
It was simple comfort humor. And this sort of established the family-friendly comedy approach that Ellen took through most of her career. And it's also what really opened the doors for her. One of the other things comedians usually do to try and promote their material is by acting. So Ellen tried to get into TV a little bit. She starred in the sitcom Open House, which lasted 2 seasons. Then was in another sitcom called Lori, which only lasted 10 episodes. But Ellen would have another big boost in her career when she made an appearance on the TV show One Night Stand. This show would regularly host stand-up comedians to do a set for half an hour. It was the beginning for many successful comedians like Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neal, and Louis C.K. Okay, maybe not that last one as much, but you get the point. And the show was a great opportunity because Ellen would soon enough get her own sitcom, Ellen. Many people probably don't remember or even know about the sitcom, but it was very, very popular back in the day. This show was basically a fictionalized version of herself who owned a bookstore and had tons of wacky scenarios every single day. Pilot episode had 26.9 million viewers and was a goddamn smash. After over a decade in the entertainment industry, Ellen was starting to get a name. If you get a self-titled sitcom that absolutely smashes in the ratings, you are basically set up for life. This show did phenomenal with each season, but behind the scenes, Ellen was carrying a very, very deep secret. At some point in her life, Ellen realized that she was gay and could not hold it in anymore. She realized that she wanted to come out and show people who she was, and the way she would do that is through the show, with a very special 2-part episode in season 4, the puppy episode. Now, they called it this to kind of keep it a secret because if they called it the lesbian episode, well, that would kind of give it away. This was a very, very big deal because never in history did a TV character come out as gay before. It was very risky with a lot on the line because this was a very, very big TV show. You'd think that ABC Network, which was owned by Disney, would not be up for this, but they were completely on board. If anything, they actually rejected the first script because they thought it didn't go far enough. ABC themselves actually officially announced about the character coming out for the very next episode. Initially, people thought it was just the character coming out to boost ratings, but they were wrong. The purpose of this episode was to announce the character and Ellen herself coming out as gay. 2 weeks before the episode premiered, Ellen appeared on Times Magazine to officially come out as gay. This brought the episode's hype up to a whole new level and kind of acted as a double-edged sword. On one hand, this made the show get more publicity than ever. In fact, tons of celebrities were lining out the door begging to make an appearance on the episode, including Oprah. And on the other hand, as you can imagine, there were a lot of people people who did not like this. Because right after the word got out about this, there was a fucking bomb threat sent to the studio. Ellen at one point was being followed by a very suspicious man after leaving the studio one night. And ABC lost out on a ton of big sponsors that really brought in the big books like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, JCPenney, a bunch of big companies. Ellen's style usually was super family friendly. It didn't involve politics or get controversial in any type of way. It was silly sitcom stuff. But being the first ever character to come out as gay, yeah, this was really crossing the line for her. But Ellen stood tall and didn't hold back. In fact, she even doubled down by appearing on the Oprah show the very same day as the episode's premiere with her girlfriend Anne Hench. Because of the controversy, ABC ended up putting a parental advisory disclaimer on the episode when it premiered. But that did not stop its performance at all, because when it premiered, it had over 42 million people tuning in. It won a Primetime Emmy Award, a Peabody Award, and a GLAAD Award. TV Guide would even name it as 35 on the best TV episodes ever made. This was a historical moment for Ellen, and it completely tarnished her career. Yes, this episode did historic views, but the rest of the show, not so much. Because soon after, the views of the show actually plummeted so hard and ABC canceled it the very next season. The very last episode had less than 6 million viewers, which was a pretty big decrease and less than the average. Ellen's career took a pretty hard hit after the show ended. She made a couple appearances in some TV shows and movies that I'm not even gonna bother naming because you wouldn't really know what they are. She did try to get back into stand-up so that she could somewhat redeem herself with the special The Beginning, which was symbolic of her coming out. But this wasn't really a comedy special, it was really just Ellen being super deep and personal. Not a lot of comedy in the comedy special, if you feel me. There was applause in the crowd, but not because it was funny. It was kind of just like an hour-long TED Talk. In 2001, Ellen attempted to make a show very similar to Ellen called The Ellen Show. It was a sitcom that starred a fictionalized version of herself that had to move into her crazy mom's home after her website went bankrupt, and they experienced crazy, wacky family scenarios every single day. This show was not related nor a sequel to the Ellen sitcom, even though the main character kind of also had the same name, so pretty confusing. And the show did horrendous as it didn't even last a full season. The ratings were so bad that 5 out of the 18 episodes just straight up did not air. That's how bad it was. Ellen was at a complete rock bottom stage in her career. And it wasn't just Ellen's career that was ending because of this, it was also her girlfriend's too. You see, Anne was very popular in the 80s with movies like Donnie Brasco, Volcano, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Initially, when Ellen and Anne started making appearances together, they were seen as Hollywood's first ever lesbian power couple. And initially, when they first went public, Anne was threatened with her career. She was escorted out of the screening of Volcano just for appearing with Ellen. She was threatened to not get the role 6 days, 7 nights, even though she ended up getting the role. But after this, Anne's career went downhill pretty bad. She would not be in a studio picture for 10 years after this. It seemed like they were willing to give it up for true love, even if they didn't get any good movie roles, but that was not the case. In reality, this relationship was extremely toxic behind the scenes. Anne claims that Ellen essentially domesticated her like a dog. Ellen wanted her to be at home all the time, never working, never seeing friends. After 4 years, they eventually broke up and Anne would finally come forward with this. In 2002, Ellen's career and life seemed to be completely done for. Her stand-up was going downhill, she was getting less TV and movie roles, her career was on borrowed time. But then, Ellen got the role of a lifetime by playing Dory in the movie Finding Nemo. The hilarious side character with short-term memory loss. Initially, Dory was going to be a male, but the writer, Andrew Stanton, remembers watching The Ellen Show and seeing her change the subject 5 times before she even finished the sentence and knew that she was the perfect person for the role. To say this movie was a hit is a goddamn understatement. It got nearly $1 billion in the box office, is the highest selling DVD of all time, and is a cultural phenomenon. Ellen got a ton of praise and a ton of awards for her role. And this is just what Ellen needed. This really boosted her back into the family-friendly comedy persona that made her so likable in the first place. Right after, she dropped her HBO special Here and Now, which many people consider to be her best material to date. Ellen would be a hit, and soon enough she would be able to get her very own show, The Ellen DeGeneres Show, a daytime talk show where Ellen would interview celebrities. It was very inspired by celebrity talk shows like Oprah Winfrey that really took over TV. The thing is though, Ellen Ellen DeGeneres Show was a daytime TV show. Daytime talk shows don't usually get the same amount of views that late night TV shows do, but this was still an amazing opportunity for Ellen, and she really took advantage of it. In 2003, the show premiered with the first ever guest, Jennifer Aniston, who was fresh off the series finale of the hit sitcom Friends. The Ellen DeGeneres Show was a different type of talk show. Usually the talk shows have very simple and funny interviews with the guests. There would be some jokes and some other stuff, and that usually would be that. Her dance moves. After every single monologue, Ellen would start to dance into the crowd, and it was really fun. It was unique, silly, wacky, and really kept to Ellen's family-friendly comedy style. It was wholesome and not controversial. The same elements that made her sitcom blow up initially is the same stuff that made her come in and just goof around. They didn't have to worry about all this crazy drama that the tabloids were talking about. The show didn't take itself too seriously, and that's why it did so well. And the ratings were insane, with an average of 2.4 million viewers. In the first 3 seasons alone, Ellen won 25 Emmy Awards. There wasn't anything bad to say about Ellen. That was until 2007, when the Writers' Strikes Guild occurred. Tons of writers from big TV shows were protesting to get residuals for DVD sales. This was not good for talk shows because usually they're the ones that write all the jokes and everything. So if you don't have the writers writing the stuff, well then you don't have a show. Now almost every single major talk show host at the time completely stood in solidarity with the writers and supported them. Some talk show hosts even paid the writer's salary during this time. All of them followed protocol except Ellen. Ellen did support the writers and was a member of the guild, but still insisted on the show continuing. The only change that she really made was not having a monologue in the beginning, because that's what the writers were usually responsible for. Regardless, this made it seem like as if Ellen was not standing with the writers, and was pretty conflicting. You can't say that you support the protest and then do the thing that completely hurts the cause of the protests. The WJEE was pissed and issued a statement against Ellen, saying that she was not welcome in New York. Ellen's representatives responded by saying that she didn't technically violate the strike in any way. They claimed that Ellen striking would have been a breach of contract under the AFTRA code, which bans her from striking. But the WJEE also pointed out that Ellen was a member of the Writers Guild, so any writing that she does goes against strike. Ellen also tried to defend it by saying that she needed to do the show in order to support her employees and give them an income, but from a surface level, it did not seem like as if Ellen was on the side of the underdogs. What made things worse was that the writers from the original Ellen show would actually come forward talking about how she was actually kind of pretty mean to them. They described it as when they were filming, she would read her lines, give them a harsh look, and then say, "Why do you keep writing these shitty jokes?" This didn't really get too much press because it was their word against hers, so nothing really came about it. But the first time Ellen actually got into some sort of trouble was in 2008 when she had Mariah Carey on the show. There were slight rumors of Mariah being pregnant at the time, and nothing gets more people riled up than a baby. When Ellen asked about it, Mariah didn't really seem to basically tying her hands. This did confirm the pregnancy, technically, but soon after this episode, Mariah would confirm that she suffered a miscarriage, which is why she kept it a secret in the first place. And she would also later talk about how insanely uncomfortable she was about this interview at the time. But when this happened, it wasn't really connected to Ellen's show, so it went under the radar. Ellen probably saw this happen and learned her lesson, for now. Each season that went by, Ellen got more and more famous guests. Like in the season 8 premiere when she got Michelle Obama, of all people, to get on the show. Or Barack Obama himself, or Bill Gates. The show absolutely peaked at this time, getting an average of 4.2 million viewers between 2005 and 2010. Around 2010, though, was when the show took a slightly different direction. On September 22nd of 2010, Rutgers student Tyler Clementi took his own life after a video of him kissing another man was posted on Twitter, and he was relentlessly cyberbullied for it. Ellen had a very emotional monologue after this event occurred, and after every single show from now on, she would tell people to be kind. Soon enough, Be Kind was the official model for Ellen, as she rapidly encouraged people to be kind in every single episode. And with the show, Ellen would start to really put her money where her mouth is by doing these large philanthropic endeavors. Like when she gave $14.5 thousand in appliances to firefighters, or when she donated $100,000 to help elephants, or when she donated $1.6 million total to give a bunch of kids college tuition for free. It's estimated that over 20 years, The Ellen Show has donated $500 million total, both to the audience through various gifts and to also a ton of charities. Ellen often would rile up her audience by giving them a bunch of gifts in each episode. And what made things even better for Ellen was the use of social media. Some of their moments got in the 100 million view range, which is crazy. Ellen completely certified her name as a staple in pop culture by the mid-2010s. Being on Ellen meant that you were somebody. She was a vessel for pop culture that showed people the fun part of celebrities and gave away tons of money. Ellen was the face of kindness. But over time, there was a slight shift in Ellen's persona. In 2016, Ellen stopped doing her dances that were so iconic. She claims that she stopped doing it because she was old and just didn't feel like doing it anymore, but this sort of seemed to represent the change of her character, if you will. Because over time, Ellen would start to show some very clear signs of narcissism and some very awkward, forced in as a little cringe. It's pretty similar to when Ellen brought Cher to a salon to give funky hairstyles to people, and she starts going over the top with all of her jokes. Eventually, Cher gets so infuriated and just straight up calls Ellen a bitch. But these aren't nearly as bad as where her true narcissism really started to show. Like when she had Katy Perry on and they played a game called Will You Parry Me? Katy made a joke about getting married again, and then Ellen claimed, wait, you're not married. Ellen forgot that she was married to Russell Brand at one point, and Katy had to remind her.
It's a game called Will You Parry Me? It's Who'd You Rather, but it's a clever title, so we just decided to change it to that.
Anyway, do I have to get married?
Answer
again!
Yeah. You got married?
I was when I was 25.
Were you?
Yeah, it's been a long time, honey.
To who?
No wrinkles, no lines.
To who?
His name was Russell Brand.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Russell. Yeah.
The embarrassing part? Well, Ellen quite literally gave them a gift on the show for their wedding. An even worse one was when she had comedian Hassan Minhaj on the show when she pronounces his name wrong.
It's so nice to meet you. I'm a huge fan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's Hassan Minhaj.
No.
Yes.
No.
Really?
Well, my name is Hassan Minhaj.
Oh.
What made it even worse was that she insisted that was the right way it's pronounced, clearly making him frustrated. There was also an incident of when Ellen had Taylor Swift on and started asking her about her dating life. Specifically, she asked about Zac Efron and how they were doing, but Taylor insists that her and Zac never dated. Yet Ellen kept to add on to this, she played a game where she would basically show a picture of Taylor Swift with the man and she would ring a bell if she dated the man. One of the worst moments was not actually on air with a celebrity, but with a fan. This woman was a college student who was trying to pay for her college tuition. She was so broke that she quite literally had to donate blood for 6 months just to get some type of money for it. Ellen had her on the show and was about to announce that Shutterfly was going to pay for her tuition, but stopped. She has a computer. This just felt disingenuous because Ellen did not need to lead her on like that. And even then, Ellen could easily have afforded to pay this woman's tuition and make her mistake right. This clip, weirdly enough, didn't get much traction either, but it really shows just how much Ellen really only does a generosity thing for the camera. Even with all of this, Ellen still had that always nice reputation. By 2018, Ellen was on top of the world. That year alone, she was paid $87.5 million, making her the 15th most paid celebrity on the planet. She was the 14th most followed person on Twitter and the 32nd most followed person on Instagram. Ellen was recognized as a cultural icon all across the world. She earned the Mark Twain Award for American Humor in 2012 and the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2016. But in 2018, Ellen got pretty tired of the repetitive daytime talk show and decided to come back to stand-up. This was a comedy special about Ellen trying to be, well, relatable. In her career, she felt very out of touch by being super wealthy and wanted to try and connect back with the audience. Some of the things that she joked about was her constant need to be nice all the time, since that was her brand now.
A few years ago, I started ending my show by saying, be kind to one another. But here's the downside. I can never do anything unkind, ever. I shouldn't even have a horn in my car. Like, if someone cuts me off in a dangerous way, if I honk, they're like, Ellen?
Since this was her first special in nearly 2 decades, the New York Times decided to do an interview with her. But what was meant to be a simple convo ended up becoming a hit piece that exposed Ellen's persona, with the title being, Ellen DeGeneres is not as nice as you think. In one part of the interview, they talk about how Ellen needs to be nice all the time. But then, out of nowhere, Ellen's wife chimes in and says, remember, the nicer they are, the harder they're going to screw you. A pretty out-of-pocket thing to say to a random interviewer. And while on the subject of this, the interviewer asked Ellen about various tabloids that claimed of her being unnice, to which she said this very weird response. That bugs me if someone is saying that because it's an outright lie. The first day I said this one thing. I want everyone here to be happy and proud of where they work, and if not, don't work here. No one is going to raise their voice or not be grateful. That's the rule to this day. Something about this just seemed eerie. It seemed disingenuous and kind of fake almost. It was just so passive aggressive for no real reason. It's kind of ironic because Portia would end the interview with this. I don't see the end of her show as her career ending, ironically predicting both the end of her show and her career. This article coming days before the year end really set the tone for 2019. Ellen. At first, she got a lot of criticism when she went to a Cowboys game with George W. Bush. People were skeptical because of very certain political beliefs that he had, which definitely did not align with Ellen's. But Ellen stood her ground and defended this by saying that be kind means by being kind to people that you don't always agree with. But this was not the worst thing that happened to her though, because this was the year that one of Ellen's most infamously viral moments would occur, and that was the one with Dakota Johnson. When Ellen had Dakota on, she jokingly talked about how she wasn't invited to Dakota's birthday party, but that's to correct Dakota that she wasn't invited, but Dakota stands on aggressive attitude through the video. And this was kind of when people started to see a little bit of Ellen's true character, if you will. This moment was reposted tons of times with people talking about just how awkward it is. It seemed like things were just waiting to completely explode in her face. And in 2020, that's basically what happened. Because on March 20th of 2020, a couple of days after the lockdown happened, comedian Kevin Porter would post this tweet that started a complete domino effect. Right now, we all need a little kindness. You know, like Ellen DeGeneres always talks about. She's also notoriously one of the meanest people alive. Respond to this with the most insane stories you've heard about Ellen being mean, and I'll match everyone with $2 to LA Food Bank. This tweet went insanely viral, getting tons of stories. One person told a story about how she made a bust of Ellen for a contest where people would win $500 for the best one. But then Ellen ended up giving the bust away to a completely random person with $500 attached on the bottom. One woman wrote about how she worked at Real Food Daily and served both Ellen and her wife. And Ellen wrote a letter complaining about the woman's chipped nail. No, she wasn't complaining about the nail in her food, just about the woman having a chipped nail in general, and yet that got her fired. There wasn't proof behind all of this, but if this many people claim that they had negative experiences with Ellen, then it must be true to some type of degree. Sometimes the small things really are enough to take away all credibility. After all, if Ellen truly was this nice like how she was on TV, then all of these things wouldn't be true. And this soon enough started a domino effect that would cause her entire career to crumble. Now, when quarantine happened, Ellen had to go film the show at her house rather than in a studio because of the pandemic. That's basically what most talk shows were doing. However, most of the staff were not communicated about what the conditions of the show were going to be. They just straight up were not updated about their jobs at all. After 2 weeks of very little communication, they were told that they were going to get their pay reduced by 60% because they weren't going to be needed as much. This is extremely professional and just simply not okay. But soon after, tons of employees would come forward about some of the horrendous conditions. Tons of workers came forward about discrimination, harassment, and bullying. A very unkind environment, and there is a lot that happened. A black woman claimed that during her 15 years on the show, she constantly received microaggressions, getting comments like, "I'm sorry, I only know the names of the white people that work here," while her coworkers just laughed it off. And when she tried to speak up about the discrimination, her colleagues separated from her. And for many years, she felt afraid to speak out because of the repercussions. Another person who was there for a year was on medical leave after an unalive attempt, only to come back to the job and find out that her job was eliminated. They felt like this was hypocritical to the openness about mental health and addiction. Some of the producers talk openly in public about addiction and mental health awareness, but they're the reason there's a stigma. They definitely don't practice what they preach with the be kind mantra. Another staff member who had to take medical leave after getting into a car accident 3 times and had to attend 2 funerals was soon fired afterwards. That's a definition of a toxic work environment, where they make you feel like you're going insane and then you're like, no, everything I was feeling was right. It was all leading up to this. If you think that's bad, another employee was simply fired for starting and promoting a GoFundMe for their medical expenses that weren't covered by insurance. Why did they do this? Because they felt like it would hurt Ellen's image. Many of the workers described it as a culture dominated by fear. A typical feeling was that if you had an issue, don't bother bringing it up. They discovered my fundraiser, then got mad at me. They were more concerned about Ellen's brand instead of helping me out. Many of the workers described it as a culture dominated by fear. A typical feeling was that if you had an issue, don't bother bringing it up. I remember feeling depressed and horrible and sad and just thinking that I can't leave, but I want to leave. Everyone was unhappy unless you were one of those people being favored. But the worst part easily was the harassment from the executive producers. One employee claimed that producer Kevin Lehman asked him to give him a hand job or do oral on them in the bathroom. Another employee claims that Kevin just straight up grabbed another assistant's you-know-what. And another employee claimed that they straight up saw Lehman grope and start kissing on the neck of another employee. Nearly a dozen employees would say that he would frequently make really sexual comments like, "Are you a top or a bottom?" He specifically would target the low-level employees so that they wouldn't come forward. 5 former employees would claim that producer Ed Galvin would inappropriately touch them, like rubbing their shoulders and then put his hands on their waists. He had a reputation for being very handsy with the female employees. He'd even call over assistants to the control room and just straight up touch them weirdly right in front of 30 people. Even though I was being abused at work constantly, Ed putting his arm around you in the control room was like the nicest experience you had all day, as messed up as that sounds. Another employee claimed that producer Jonathan Norman constantly groomed them by taking them to concerts and other work-related perk events. Then afterwards tried to come on to him. We're young people who were forming our careers and were unfortunately subjected subjected to a toxic work environment as some of our first jobs out of college, and some of us were sexually harassed, and that's what was shaping our careers our first year out of school. Initially, these allegations were denied by all 3 producers, but with 30 employees coming together all making these claims, it's pretty hard to believe the producers. Now, the question of how responsible Ellen was for all of this is pretty up in the air. Some of the workers who made these claims actually kind of sort of defended Ellen in a way. They said that she did not know what was going on because she simply was not in the office interacting with people enough to really understand the culture. The producers never really acted like this in front of Ellen. They would act nice when she's in the room and then show their true colors when she was out. But on the other hand, some people did claim that she did know about this behavior. One employee claims that Ellen straight up did not want to know what went on behind the scenes, so that basically no one rocked the boat. She knows shit goes on, but also she just doesn't want to hear it. The idea that Ellen worked with all these producers and didn't at least suspect something is pretty unlikely. Regardless, it's her show and her name, so she has to take responsibility no matter what. The very same month of all these allegations, Telepictures, which is a unit of Warner Brothers, announced that they were doing an internal investigation into the company. They hired a third-party consultant to do confidential interviews with the Ellen employees so that they could understand what was going on. Around the same time, Ellen made a statement where she took full responsibility for all of the workplace culture. Hey everybody, it's Ellen. On day 1 of our show, I told everyone in our first meeting that the Ellen DeGeneres show would be a place of happiness. No one would ever raise their voice and everyone would be treated with respect. Obviously, something changed, and I am disappointed to learn that this has not been the case, and for that, I am sorry. Anyone who knows me, it's the opposite of what I believe and what I hoped for our show. At the time of this, lots of celebrities actually came to Ellen's defense. Ashton Kutcher, Jay Leno, Katy Perry, Sofia Vergara, Kevin Hart all came to Ellen's defense talking about how nice of a person she was. Ellen's wife Portia even posted a picture saying, "I stand by Ellen," which showed her support and encouraged others to support her as well. They all thought that these rumors were completely fabricated and misconstrued in some type of way. They couldn't be true. The Ellen that they knew would never ever allow these types of things to happen. However, some other celebrities came forward with their experiences with Ellen as well. Brad Garrett said on Twitter that he knew of several people that had very bad experiences with Ellen. This was also echoed by Leah Thompson. Mariah Carey also came forward and talked about her very bad experience all the way back in 2008. Ellen's former DJ, Tony Okumboa, also came forward to talk about how he felt there was a lot of toxicity when he worked on The Ellen Show and stood by the people that were coming forward. From the investigation, all 3 of the producers that were accused of harassment all had to leave the show. On the premiere of season 18, Ellen opened up with an apology and promised to do better. It was pretty disingenuous, as she made a lot of jokes that really were not reading the room, if you feel me. And overall, this took a really big hit on the show because her ratings would plummet after this. Her show went from an average of 2.6 million viewers to 1.5 million viewers, which is a 43% decrease in 1 year. Soon, she would announce that season 19 would be the last official season of the Ellen DeGeneres show. Ellen claimed that she was doing this because the show wasn't challenging enough, but we all know that's complete bullshit. She referred to all the people that were enjoying the downfall of the show as mean people, even though she quite literally was exposed as a mean person. On May 26, 2022, her last ever episode would premiere with Jennifer Aniston, the first ever guest on the first episode. And after 19 seasons, 3,339 episodes, and countless awards, the Ellen DeGeneres show was officially done. So what did Ellen do after the show ended? Well, Ellen did intend to stay in show business for a little bit, but the only thing that she really did after this was an HBO exclusive documentary called Saving the Gorillas, Ellen's Next Adventure. And most likely this is the very first time you're hearing about it because it completely sucked and flopped. The ratings were not so great either. Some people may have seen this as some type of stunt to try and get back that kind persona, but she has talked about and has donated money for her causes to preserve wildlife before, so it wasn't exactly out of the blue. But this was like the only other thing that she did. The very next year, Ellen would make a very unexpected move by announcing a stand-up tour. This was a comeback from after not doing stand-up for nearly 6 years. This was also announced as her last ever stand-up tour because it would be turned into her last ever stand-up special. To answer the questions everyone is asking me, yes, I'm going to talk about it. Yes, this is my last special. This last special was essentially Ellen's last ever chance to really redeem herself in some type of way. Even though this was like 4 years after the controversy, the special dropped on July 3rd of 2024. It started with this whole dramatic sequence of all of these bad headlines of Ellen, kind of like it was going to symbolize that she was going to address the controversy. She starts off with essentially admitting that she does care about what people think, which comes off as honest, but also kind of as like a plea for pity. Of course she wouldn't care when she got 30 Emmys and over 4 million viewers and top tier celebrities. But when most of the headlines and talk about her is negative, well, yeah, of course she's gonna care what people fucking think. Anybody would. And her intention with this whole special was pretty unclear, honestly, because she makes it seem like she would address some of the rumors or explain some things even though she doesn't. Granted, a stand-up special probably is not the best way to address some of this stuff, but hey, what do I know, right? Ellen would joke about her new reputation of being being mean, kind of like as if people were dumb to believe that now. She claims that she was kicked out of show business for being mean, even though it was more than that. There were several employees being harassed and traumatized under her watch. Ellen wasn't really helping herself at all with the special because it kind of just confirmed some of the characteristics that she already had. Much of the humor is very out of touch, not relatable, disingenuous, and self-indulgent. Kind of like this one joke where she kind of like talks about her car. It just wasn't really landing. If this was supposed to make people think that she was not mean, it definitely did not help. And on top of it all, it just wasn't really good. Like, controversy aside, the material was just semi-decent. The reviews definitely did not help it either. It got a 5.2 rating on IMDb and a 33% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Safe to say, this special did not redeem Ellen's career in the slightest. With the combination of coming off disingenuous and doing this 4 years after the controversy occurred, I don't really see how Ellen thought this would help her in any type of way. And after this, Ellen would finally stick to her word and not do show business anymore. She didn't do appearances, acting, nothing. Ellen had a sad career ending and pretended to go out on her own terms. Things couldn't possibly get any worse, right? Well, now you guys remember how Diddy got arrested for all of his weird ass parties and stuff? Well, around that time he got arrested, one of Ellen's tweets from 2016 surfaced and got a lot of eyebrow raises. Happy birthday P. Diddy, Puff Daddy Sean Combs, or as I call him, Cuddle McSnuggle Stuff. You don't need to know why. That's a wild thing to see out of context. Ellen had Diddy on her show multiple times and has been in attendance at his famous white parties. So there was some speculation as to her involvement with some of the weird stuff that was going on. And when all those lawsuits were being pressed against Diddy, they did say that a lot more celebrities were going to be named. Was Ellen one of those celebrities? There's no proof, but out of context, it just looked bad. What made things worse was that pretty soon after Diddy was arrested officially, Ellen and her wife moved to the UK for good, seemingly fleeing the country. They said that this was because of Trump winning the election, but there's also a lot of speculation it was to avoid future consequences. Again, there's no proof, but it doesn't help Ellen look good. But one thing's for sure is that Ellen's career is in the toilet. Her special flopping was the real final nail and ego get in the way. The ironic part is that Ellen could have literally avoided all this by simply just practicing what she preached, be kind. But to Ellen, it's only be kind when the cameras are on. It's only be kind when the people that are worth your time are in the room. It's only be kind when it's good publicity for the show. It's only be kind when it's convenient to her. Ellen had so many chances to learn from her actions, but never did. And what's crazy that in her mind, she is still the victim. She still believes that she was the victim of this elaborate scheme to take her down, when in reality, it was her poor accountability and leadership that really led her to this. Now, considering Ellen's worth more than $370 million, I think she's going to be just fine. She and her wife are going to live a nice life in the UK, and she's going to leave all of this behind her. But Ellen won't get the one thing that she wants the most, people's respect, because that's the one thing that you can't buy, and Ellen had to learn this the hard way.